racing, it's life. Anything that happens before or after, just waiting.
Гонки – это то, чем мы живем. Это наша стихия. Мы едем на пределе возможностей техники и человека. С замиранием сердца следим за трансляцией. Забывая про страх, презрев усталость и горечь поражений, мы рвемся к новым победам. Ведь нас не устраивает никакая позиция, кроме первой. Опираясь на богатое гоночное наследие Porsche, продолжая исторические традиции и подхватывая инновации, мы с гордостью представляем для вас новый проект, который объединит всех фанатов автоспорта. Porsche Russia Simreal Cup. Гибрид двух миров, онлайн и реальных гонок. Какой выберешь ты? Регистрируйся на simrealcup.com и стань частью гоночного наследия будущего.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Porsche Russia Simreal Cup. We're live at Spa, but also in real life. My name is Luke Rogers and I'm joined by Jessica Ball for a 100-minute race where we will have 4 drivers doing 25-minute stints, not just on this simulated Spa track, but also in the karts in real life. We have been a bit delayed. We got to miss qualifying because we had some technical gremlins, but we've got them out the way and now we can bring you both the races. So Jessica, first off we come to the karts here. I'm quite excited for this because it's not very often we see that sort of Simreal system that they have going on here.
Yeah, exactly. They don't have to just adapt to the ACC and the sim world. They also got to deal with the karting world. And for majority of the drivers that want to race professionally, that's where people start from, like Lando Norris, for example. Lewis Hamilton started in karts as well. So really just a good experience on how racing is like in real life, even though karting is definitely different to like the GT4s, GT3s that they'll be racing in ACC. It's going to be a nice transition as well, and all the drivers will have to do both. They'll have to do some laps in ACC and some laps in the kart as well. So on all the rigs are actually in the venue itself as well, so it'll be a smoother transition. They don't have to go home and go on their sim rig at home. They've got sim rigs in the actual venue so they can swap between the two simultaneously, which is quite nice, but it should be a good one.
Yeah, so for those at home, the top 10 drivers in the simulated race here are those drivers that are also going to be racing in the karts. So those top 10, they're all in GT3s. And we also have a bunch of, I think it's 14 GT4s that'll be racing this. They're all the sort of special editions to this. I believe they're all driving solo. Yeah, the invited drivers like Jardia. We've got Niels van der Kekelt, Tinker van der Velde, some very fast drivers in there. And someone who I've actually seen get onto pole before in Maciej Malinowski. Up in 11th, and naturally David Perel is, I think, is he on 24th? Where has he gone? Oh,
there
down
he
at the back
is.
of the grid. He's not going to like that one, but I'm sure he'll come through the grid as we go through this race. 100 minutes, an hour and 40 there, both in the real and in the kart. So it's not a short one, but it's not quite an endurance race. And those 25-minute stints are going to throw strategy out the window.
Yeah, I remember doing an endurance race in karting before where we did 25-minute stints, and if you haven't done that much karting, it definitely hurts your ribs quite a lot. It aches quite a bit, and the next day it definitely hurts, definitely. But 25 minutes just go like that, and they got to think about strategy as much as they can. It's not like you could do an hour stint on fuel. You got to calculate your fuel well as well, because if you run out of fuel just before you go and do your next stint, then you're going to be in a lot of trouble when the next driver drives. So on the left hand side, as you can see, is the drivers are getting ready to go in, and it's kind of like go in and go basically, and I'm really excited to see this as well. This is sunny conditions in Spa. Obviously in real life in Spa it's not quite so, it's chucking it down right now, so at least the drivers don't have to suffer the wet in the ACC world, but even again that's quite tricky as well. But we got the famous El Rouge up the hill, and then we got Radion Camel Straight, and we got the famous Pouron as well, and we'll be soon heading to Blanchimont as well, going up the hill again with that long straight into the bus stop chicane. So many famous corners, first used in racing in 1920, which is a long time, and it was first in the Formula 1 calendar when Formula 1 first started back in 1950, along with Silverstone and Monaco, I believe. So that should be fun, as we got 10 teams competing for the Simreal Cup, so we'll just and those are named by those team names, as you can see. We'll go through those in a minute. Apologies in advance, we get all the names wrong of the drivers. We are not the best at pronouncing Russian names. We do apologise in advance, just in case we say them wrong. But we're about to get underway, and let's do this.
Yeah, we see on the left, obviously we have the Le Mans start for the karting. They're going to rush towards those carts, hop in. Obviously no seatbelts on those cars, so you're just going to hop straight in and go. And getting that right, getting that fast is actually going to be so important for the start of the race, because it's a very tight and technical track that they're going to be racing in those carts. It's not like Spa where you have those expansive straights that you can use to overtake people. It's going to be very difficult to get around each other on that go-karting track. So getting that start right, getting yourself into a good position, but also getting those pit stops right is going to be a really important part of that race. We're heading into the bus stop here. Meanwhile, in the simulated world, I think this start's going to be a pretty interesting one. Naturally, you will be bunched up quite heavily coming into Eau Rouge, as the start line for GT3, the GT racing in general at Spa, is actually round La Source. So you'll be starting on that second straight, rather than here where the F1 cars and pretty much every open wheel car would start. So we're going to head down to La Source. It's going to take a little bit longer naturally, but it does mean you get that big bunch of cars screaming down the Kemmel Straight coming into Le Combes. And one thing I love about what we've got here is the fact that everyone is in the same car. The Porsche is pretty well known for being quite a fast car here, but it's very hard to drive, and it's not got great straight line speed. So when it's on a grid with something like an Aston Martin, it really struggles on those straights. But today it's not that. Today everyone is in the same car, and we're about to get underway. The lights are about to go green on both sides. We'll see the drivers on the right rush to the cars on the left rush up the hill. Here we go, approaching the line. As soon as we get to that Total barrier, cars will go. And we're underway for the race. We see the drivers running to the right, cars running to the left. Up to Eau Rouge, we're going to be side by side twice at the front of the grid. But the Yaz Heat car gets ahead early. We're 3 wide just behind. Everyone just about makes it up the hill. There's nothing too dangerous going on in the Spa race so far. But the karting, a lot of 2 wides. So a lot of people jostling for that early position. That track position is going to be key as we head into the race.
Yeah, it is as well. I did see the guy that was meant to be starting on pole position in the karts didn't get off quite nicely. Everyone else, I think, got away quicker, as in the ACC world. Oh, there's contact already past Le Combes, as to be expected. Hopefully some people will try to avoid that, as our Sim Race GP team is doing quite well in 3rd place, and Yazzie 5 numbers per second in front of Pink Stars, trying to get rid of a bit of a gap as well. And here is F1 Means Racing. What a livery, trying to get a move on No Name. He's touched, I think, some cars behind as well, which is not good. And I think we can see the GT4s behind as well. So they're all very close together as they head towards Pouron. Now let's see if they can carry that momentum heading towards the next set of corners, which will be canvassed very, very soon. And we are starting to see some side-by-side action in Pouron, which is very brave to do. I don't usually do those moves there, so they're very, very brave, but they are the best, of course. And obviously we got the invitational drivers definitely showing their mettle. I've seen Whitehead before in some other sim racing invitationals as well. He's a very talented driver in the 21 car.
Yeah, Maciej Malinowski leads in the GT4s at the minute, and he's pretty well known, I think, especially in the sim grid world. He put it on pole in I think it was the World Cup at Spa in the wet, in the GT3 event we had. But obviously he was in a GT3 first off, and it was in a Mercedes as well. So driving a Porsche GT4 here is a very different experience. This car's, I think, about as close as you can get to maybe driving a go-kart in ACC. The car it's not got that much downforce, the Porsche GT4, but it's one of those cars you really have to throw into the corners and really rely on the sort of mechanical grip more than the downforce. But it is very, very fast through those corners, especially for a GT4 car. We approach, here we go, the GT3 field. We're right at the back here with the 11 car. They're right on the back. We've really got nose to tail still through that whole field of the top 10. No one's really pulling away yet. We've got a bit of a lead at the front. I think that's closing down pretty quick, as we may have a move coming into a Rouge. Now they back out of it. I thought for a second they were going to go too wide, but they think better of it. Going to get that run up the hill, and you use that slipstream, that toe. Both these cars obviously have the same engine, have that same straight line performance. So that slipstream is going to be everything here.
Yeah, indeed. Obviously, the Porsche GT3, they're a rear-engined car, so it's very different to what you may see in the Merc. They're obviously not racing today, and that was very close into the top of the hill there from Simrace GP on the back of Yassi at this moment in time. And if you get a foot wrong into these corners, then you're probably going to end up to spin, but not as dangerous as Rouge and Radion corner as well. We've seen quite a few people have dropped positions in the karting at the moment, and I have to say, I've never driven indoor karting. The main experience I've had with karting was about a year ago in the outdoor karting world, and in indoor you're either racing on concrete or tarmac. I think it's tarmac, but correct me if I'm wrong, but this is very twisty sets of corners that they have to negotiate as well, and obviously a lot slower than the GT4s and the GT3s today, but I think we're starting to see some gap forms, but I think a lot closer than these GTs, because they can go at it for the whole 100 minutes that we're seeing. We've already done about a few minutes already, and still plenty of this race left to go. I wonder if these drivers are starting to get a bit of an adrenaline at the moment. I think they're carrying about 1.5 to 2 G-force at the moment, which is not a lot compared to what they experienced in an F1 car, but still the G-force as well, and still plenty. And I'm trying to get some more notes about the karts, but it's quite hard to get a few screens up at the moment. As talking about the weight, actually, if they're using any lead to balance the weight at weigh-in, or some drivers will have seat inserts as well. If you weigh less, you tend to be quicker in a straight line in these karts. However, in the corners, you'll suffer due to lack of traction, whereas in ACC it doesn't really matter, to be honest, because they'll be in the rigs as well. And also the chassis tends to flex in indoor karting compared to the outdoor karting as well. So that's mainly for those people that are not as used to indoor karting and outdoor karting. But back to the ACC world, we're starting to see the best really coming to life. And most of the people are within 4 or 5 tenths of each other, where we got Virtual E-School battling against Flash and Dash for 6th position right now as they head towards the Camel Straight.
Yeah, for those who are trying to find a way to sort of get that Simreal and keep track of both at the same time, the numbers for the cars and the GT3 and the karts are the same. So that leading kart that's got, I think it was a 4 to 5 second lead, their sort of simulated counterpart is in that 6th place at the minute, the Splash and Dash car of that number 8. We see towards the front, there's a bit of a gap. I'm not sure if those timings are correct, because the Yaz Heat car was right on the back of that car. At least no, it does look correct. So two seconds there for the lead. Those big gaps for me early are going to be very, very important, because as I already said, these cars are the same in the straight line. So, if you can pull away from that slipstream, that's when you can start to build a gap. If you get stuck with the half a second gap, as we sort of see throughout the field, I'm thinking 4th, 5th, 6th, those cars are going to be stuck together for a long time. It comes to the GT4s here. Van der Kokelt and Adam here are getting very close, very tetchy here, but not going to quite get side by side through the corner. Looks like Van der Kokelt backed out of it for a second. Oh, actually, no, did he get past? Yes, he did. He got past there, moving up into 19th place ahead of Adam. Nice little pass there into a corner that is generally not a premium overtaking spot, but it's an early race. It's only 7 minutes in. I believe all the GT4 races are doing the whole race solo. It's not like how we have the 25 minutes since the GT3. These guys are going to be going for 100 minutes each. So it might actually be important here to just sort of temper yourself a bit. Maybe you don't want to push too hard, exert too much energy. And I think also with I think it's a 3-stop mandatory. So the tyres, not really a thing. Strategy, not really a thing. You just want to be using those. You don't want to be pushing as hard as you can on those tyres as often as possible. But it's going to be interesting to see if we have sort of an ebb and flow where you have those drivers that maybe push early and conserve themselves a little bit later on. It kind of feels like right now we have that breakaway of the first 3 cars and everyone else is kind of close together.
Yeah, I don't know what's happened to the Why So Slow team, because they dropped down into 24th place, so they're behind, I think, the GT4s right now. But what the GT4s have to experience soon is the traffic of getting lapped by the GT3, which is even hard, obviously, in normal endurance racing. This is known for the 24 hours of Spa, which we experienced a couple of weeks ago in real life, which was great to watch. But, you know, that could be very, very hard. Usually the slow car keeps the racing line, and then the faster car will need to try and find a way to get past them in certain corners. Usually the straights are the best moments to get past them, but if none of the cars tend to budge, then it could cause a lot of trouble. So I think, and again with the GT3s, they will have to deal with the GT4s as well to try and lap them as well. We don't want any incidents with that at this point. So we're almost 10 minutes down at this rate, and it's Pink Star that leads by 1.6 seconds with the number 7 car at the moment to Yassi. And then we got another 1.6 seconds to Simrace GP. And then funny Formula 1 bikes, I don't know how they came up with those names, is in 4th position. Leading the GT4s is Malinowski in the number 992, who's got a 3-second gap to Amanotti. And then in 12th place, which we're currently riding on board with, Michelle Narby is around about 3 tenths to P11 in 3rd in class right now. So I think this is the battle that we're going to see right now, probably the closest on track. The closest GT3 battle is between the number 5 car and the number 3 car, and also we got number 10 and 11 and 8 in a battle as well. That train can grow pretty quickly, so if they don't get a move on, then the train will start to get very, very tasty indeed in the sunshine in Spa. Not like in real life, of course, where it's absolutely chucking it down.
We've got a couple cars in the pit lane. Obviously, we saw the 4 car started from the pits. They did come out, but they had to stop, I think, somewhere towards Blanchimont. So I'm not sure if they've had a crash or if there's some technical gremlins plaguing that team. But also the 36 car down in 23rd, obviously, in the timing screen, they're in the pits as well. I'm not sure why. Whether this is a strategy call and they're taking an early pit stop, I'm not sure. So obviously, it is that 3 mandatory stop. But you can mess around with them, put them in weird times, maybe try and get yourself into that clean air. But it's quite a long stop for now, so it looks like maybe there's some technical gremlins. We switch back to the karting here. You'll see the can't quite make out the name of the top. It looks like it's the 12 car. I can't see the number, unfortunately, with the feed we have. But there we go. That's the 52. Is that up in the first place? They've got a 7-second lead at the minute to the 5 car. It looks like they're extending that as well, as the gap seems to slowly be increasing and increasing. But you see with that track map on the bottom right, it is such a bit of contact there into the corner, but no harm done in the end. A little bump, but nothing major. Those karts, one of the great things about karting is they do sort of survive those little taps. You have that protective girder around the side of the car that will protect it. But coming to that track map, it is such a tight and twisty track. There's really no break. And we say it's only a 25-minute stint, right? Those 25 minutes are the longest 25 minutes of your life.
Yeah, I know that as well when I've done karting as well, with these longer laps around. It's shorter than obviously the Spa as well. We got the Spa, which is 10.04 kilometers, and then we got this as well. But it feels like an eternity as well, especially when you'll be handing over to the next person in the kart very, very soon as well. And then if you're doing more stints, which was the case of me when I did endurance racing for, I think it was about an hour, so we all did 20 stints each. We had to get used to doing our qualifying laps by ourselves, and then when we actually got to racing, we would still feel as if that we can't do anymore. But they just got to push through the pain and get started with, really, as well, because obviously they'll be racing in the GT3s, which will be a lot easier. And here comes Tariq Adam battling with I believe it's the number 47 car, who has got a drive-through, I believe. So that is not good. And also in this train, we got Jarosław Honzik as well, also known as Jardier, very, very well known in the sim racing world, who's doing a great job at the moment, trying to close into this battle. And looking up front with the GT3, we got Yassi as well, which is the team that Jarosław is in as well, but not for this race. He's chasing down Pink Stars for the race lead. They're not doing too well in the karting, but they're doing very well in the GT3. So let's see what they could do going side by side into the Camel Straight then. He's going to be very, very precise then. Is he going to go for the late lunge? He doesn't. And Pink Stars closes the door there very nicely into their com. And they clipped the curb a little bit. That was very, very close indeed. That could have ended up in disaster, but luckily they didn't. And it looks like the challenger car, the number 9, has also got a drive-through as well. So I believe they're gone into the pits to serve that drive-through.
Yeah, it was one of those overtakes there where if it was any other car leading the race, if this wasn't a single make race and that 2 car was looking for that overtake, you'd probably try it in a Porsche, because this car is very well known for being extremely good on the brakes and also pretty good out of the corners as well. So if you can get to the inside or even to the outside sometimes into a corner, it's going to really work. But when you're in this single make championship, that car is going to have the same braking performance as you. So if you're not alongside them, if you can't get, let's say to their door coming up to the inside of a corner, there's not really much point trying it, because you're just not going to make the overtake. So I think settling in behind here, they are pulling that gap on 3rd place. They're cementing their position in the top 2. I really like this patience from the 2 car, the Yassi Dudarev team. They are, I think, eventually going to make this overtake work, but it's going to be interesting to see if this is a battle that's going to go on for the whole race, or if it's just these 2 drivers, because naturally 25 minutes into this race we're going to be swapping drivers and be putting new people in as we come to the end of those first stints.
Yep, and they'll probably be at much different pace to the drivers on track right now, so you may see the order swap and change a little bit. So it's crucial that they get those moves done nice and early before the changeover, because otherwise then the deficit is going to increase more and more. So these 2 then heading towards La Source to start the next lap. I think he's going to go for the early lunge there, the Yaskit car, the number 2. Let's see if he could give enough space as they possibly can, and they may go too wide heading towards our route here, which will be very, very brave indeed, past the endurance pits, which they will be using to go into the pit later on. But looks like Yazzie had the edge there, got past before they go up the hill, and he's in the lead for now. But let's see what Pink Stars could do to see if they can get past Yazzie into the Camel Straight then. And we also got funny Formula Warriors that could catch up like no tomorrow. So we saw Pink Stars defending a moment ago, and now it's Yassie's turn, and Yassie defending very, very well. So Yassie is your new race leader for the GT3 cars.
I think from what I'm seeing, there's a definite setup difference between these 2 cars. It looks like that Yassi car's maybe struggling a little bit in the straights, but is really excelling in those corners. So they're able to get so close on that acceleration phase. They can get to the outside and push and get all the way to the sort of the quarter panel, the front quarter panel of the car, coming into a rouge, and that's when the red car had to sort of back out and had to sort of concede the corner. And because they were offline, because they were out of position coming through the corner, they lost that straight line speed and couldn't get the overtake done. But if they can stay there, if they can keep close, I think we might see this battle resume on the next lap. If we come to the karting here on the left, we can see, I think the gap is still extending at the front. It's 7 seconds now, so another second has been added here for that lead. It's really a big performance here by that team so far to push the 7-second gap. You look further down the field, it's only 1.3 back to 3rd place. So the drivers trying to catch up to that 1st place team are not quite as close, or sorry, are rather more close than they are for that lead position. There are some bigger gaps forming already though behind. 5th and 6th is another 10 seconds. The car in last place is last by 10 seconds as well. Those gaps are going to be hard to bring back over the course of this race. It is a 100-minute race, so there is a lot of time to make up for those gaps, those deficits. But generally speaking, this grid, everyone here is going to be pretty fast. It's going to be pretty skilled. There's not really going to be that driver that you put him in the car and you've got a 10-second lead and you lose it by the end. If you're losing those times early on, maybe from mistakes, maybe from incidents that are, or racing too hard even can happen. If, let's say, 3rd and 4th of racing, the front 2 will start to pull away as they're in clean air, which is what we're seeing happening in this GT3 race. If that happens as well in the karting, I think it's going to be harder in the karts versus the sim race to make any gaps back.
Yeah, because I think how close the lap times we have seen in qualifying and in the race in terms of the karting, then yeah, I think it'll be hard to claw back if you make a mistake. So really, you got to really decide your stint well, and I'm sure the drivers have planned that in advance, who's going in the kart when. Luckily, the GT4 cars, they won't be going into karts because obviously they're not in the venues. They are the invitational drivers, but for the top 10, well, not the top 10, but most of the teams that haven't got a driver name listed, including Why So Slow down in 23rd place at the moment, not ideal, then they will have to do a lap around the karts at some point. They haven't decided. Well, we don't know when, but the drivers do. And so I wonder what is the best situation to be in. Being in the sim rig first or in the karts first. Ideally, I would want to be in the karts first, because usually that's quite trickier to get a handle compared to the ACC rig. But I don't know. But at least with karts, there's no manual gears, so you don't have to get used to that. We're seeing a huge battle going side by side into the bus stop. I do believe there's a few lapped cars as well, as we're seeing the number 14 going into the pits. But we are starting to see, I think, more battles happening in the karting once again. And I believe, according to the times, I believe it's Yas Heat that's leading the karting too. So they must have made quite a few rounds in the karting then, because I think they were down in 10th earlier, and now they're down in leading the race. I think their fastest lap at the moment, as you can see at the bottom, is a 32.4, and the gap is around about 7.2 seconds. And I think the closest battle we've got is between, I think, P3 and the P2 there as well. So P2's got to get a move on.
Yeah, it's one of those where if you do lose that big gap, you have to then rely on the car in front of you making mistakes, right? You're not going to pull a 7-second gap back unless they put someone in that is maybe half a second slower a lap, which I kind of feel like it's hard to believe, that's going to happen. So you're kind of now relying on those drivers in front to either have issues or slow down if you let those gaps grow and let them get bigger. But at the same time, if you try and push beyond your own limit to try and bring those gaps back, if you try and, let's say find 2-3 tenths extra, that could be the difference between you making your lap and, just holding on to the position you have, and you losing out and, maybe crashing yourself. So I guess there's that decision to be made now for those guys in second and third. Do we push? Do we try and catch up to that leader? Or we, for now, just say, right, this is the pace we have. This is what we can do. Let's stick to it. And talking of that, we now have a battle here for 4th place back in the GT3 world. It looks like the 3 car is setting up for a move, but are they going to be close enough coming into Les Combes? No, not quite. They're going to tuck back in behind and think about it another time as we head through Les Combes. There is a lot of overtaking opportunities at this track, especially in a single make series, because there's a lot of opportunities in a Porsche to make mistakes here. The car's generally very twitchy. You normally set the car up to be quite pointy, quite oversteery. So when you come to corners like Pouhon, those faster corners in the Porsche can be very scary and really lends themselves to those small mistakes that it might only cost you a couple tenths if you have a little wobble, but it will give the car behind you, if they're close enough, to the other opportunity to get to the inside and maybe go up through the corner. So if you can stick as close as possible, if you can stick within a couple tenths, like we're seeing right here for the 3 car, they're right on the back of that 11 car. Any mistake now out of the 11 will hand that position over, as they're going to look for the inside, and if they don't quite get there, coming into Fania. But I think it's only a matter of time here before we see these two go side by side into a corner. It might even happen coming up to Blanchemont.
Yeah, I think there's just so many corners you can get the overtake and make it work. And Blanchemont is definitely a one where you line up for an overtake heading into the bus stop, and if you nail that overtake, then that could work wonders for you for the rest of the final few corners. So that's what Sim Race GP is trying to do in the number 3 car as well. For some of these drivers, they don't know what is going on in the karting world. I think karting world are oblivious to what's happening in the sim world. So here comes Sim Race GP then to the right of the bus stop chicane. That is a very hard line to stick, and they're not leaving much room at all, as they almost go off the track almost as they head towards last source then. Will they try to have a cheeky move up the inside? They got to be careful though, because the number 6 car is catching. Oh, that is a very brave move into last source, but look at that switchback that I believe Virtual eSchool tried to do on a Sim Race GP. That was absolutely incredible. I tried doing a switchback there once and it did not go off. I ran into a wall and unfortunately ended my race. So but these drivers know what they're doing. That's why they're racing, and we are in the commentary box. So they're lining up for the Camel Straight once more. This battle's not over. Sim Race GP does have a drive-through, so I wonder what happened there, but they're still gonna fight anyway into the Camel Straight. This is where they can't make any mistakes. Oh, one of the cars has cut the corner there, and I think that's allowing the number 6 car to be like, you know what, I could possibly gain momentum in, possibly try and get both of them as they head towards Bruchel. Oh, one car's gone off and nearly into the wall, and that's the position gone for them, I believe. Once the timing update, I believe it is Sim Race GP. Yeah, but it's Sim Race GP, as Bendino is trying to catch up to Virtual eSchool. My oh my, that was an intense battle. I like that. And now we're getting back to the karting. At the moment, it's hard to tell the number. I think the numbers are back now, which is good. So the number 2 is leading, and then we got the number 7 in P2. So it is now easier to track on who's who out on track. In a few minutes' time, though, Luke, there will be everybody that will be swapping their drivers in the karts and also in the GT3 cars.
And that's when I think we're going to start to get a real picture, especially in the GT3 race, where the gaps aren't quite as big, of which team is the team that's going to be pushing for that win. Because, you know, after one stint, it might just be that you put your fastest driver in. It might just be that you've thrown the guy in that can pull a bit of a gap earlier, can make some positions up at the start, and then you're potentially slower drivers. So even if it's 1 or 2 tenths, you put the slightly slower drivers in, you sort of settle for what you've got. But it might be that there are some more stacked teams in here. There's some teams that have a second fast driver, a third fast driver that will come in and maybe start to work their way forward. Having this 4 driver setup for both races makes that real ebb and flow happen, where you start off with the with one driver that has one set of pace, and maybe the 7 car will have a faster driver for the second stint as we come up to that 25-minute mark. So I'm really excited to see exactly what happens. We've had quite a few drive-throughs already. I would assume they're probably due to track limits, but given how early we are into the race, they're quite early to get track limit warnings. For those who don't know or don't do much ACC racing, if you go off track and gain an advantage 4 times, you'll get a drive-through, and then it will reset 4 more times to get you another one. So we've seen cars taking a little bit of liberty, I think, on the inside of Radion. We've seen cars go a little bit wide through Lecum, on that right-hander and cutting the corner. So I wouldn't be surprised if some of these guys are getting those track warnings, and that's why we're seeing a couple drive-throughs. We've already had, I think the 4 car, and there was one more, I think GT3 that had I think it might have been the 9, that had a drive-through already. The 3 car joining them as well, and there was a couple of GT4s. But talking of GT4, we dug into him a little bit because he started last place, but Mr. Perel's already up to 15th. We've seen a couple of drivers behind have made that first pit stop already. We've got 3 cars who I think will go back ahead of him once that is out of the way. But still a nice start for Mr. Perel. He's working his way up. He's running at the minute 6th. I think it will go back to 8th or 9th once that is their pit stops are resolved. But still a really nice start from him. Maciej Malinowski still leads, but Whitehead has got their second place. I think there was a lot of sort of holding up going when I think it was Novakovsky started in second place and was holding up some of those slightly faster drivers. But now Whitehead is released. I'm intrigued to see if he can bring that 11-second gap back. But at 11 seconds already, that's a big lead in GT4.
That is massive, and obviously GT4s are a lot different to GT3s, so you got to be, I think, within less temps to really make benefit of some moves. So excellent stuff as well, and obviously Perel being a big name in the sim grid, and then obviously coach Tabe Academy as well, which you can check up setups as well, which I've got a few from there, and it's very, very good. Now I've just noticed, and one of the GT4s has got a stop and go penalty for 30 seconds. I think that's Honorati, so speeding in the pit lane. So that is something that I've found victim quite a few times on ACC. So that is not good for him for that. So I think he has to serve it very, very soon. Whereas I think Simrace GP, due to that drive-through, I think due to them pitting, I think they'll have to pit again for their driver swap. So I believe we've reached the point where they're about to switch, even in the karts or in the cars. I'm surprised they haven't switched yet, but they're going to be switching anytime now. Oh, someone's gone off in El Rouge. Easy to do. I think they just missed the curb, but that could have been a lot worse if they
got away with that.
If that was very, very intense there.
Yeah, it was only a light tap on the wall, so I think they'll be okay. They can get that. It shouldn't be too much damage to repair. We come to the karting here. We see why so slow in 6th. So we're getting the team names now on the left. So that's how we can, and the numbers. They fixed it finally. So we're trying to work out. So the 2-car leads in the karting. We've got the 8-car in 4th place. I believe that's the Yazhik. No, Yazhik's in first. Sorry, I'm getting that confused. But the 8-car we were talking about that earlier in GT3. They're up in 4th place as well. They weren't having as good a race in the GT3. I remember now. As we'll switch back to it, obviously we'll see. But that 14-second gap at the front, wow, that's going to be so important going through the rest of this race. It also lets the next driver that gets in, they can, maybe take it a little bit easier. They can lose a 10th here or a 10th there rather than pushing too hard. And that's going to be really important, I think, for them coming into the rest of the race. But meanwhile, that battle for second, 1 second between them. it's been like this pretty much the entire stint so far, as we're 27 minutes into the race. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon, because they seem right on pace with each other. 1/10 of a second difference that time round.
Yeah, and in karting, it could get very, very spicy indeed, the more closer that they are at this moment in time, as obviously Yassi doing fantastic, but the number 7 car also doing brilliant as well. Why so slow? Up in 6th place, doing a lot better in karting than they are in ACC at the moment. At least they don't have to worry about stop goes in terms of penalties, but I do believe, I know when I go karting, that obviously if you abuse the track limits, which is hard to do in an indoor track, you do get the black flag, and sometimes you have to be called into the pits, and the marshals explain why you've exceeded track limits and been a naughty lad or naughty gal, depending on what gender you are. So I believe Onorati is pitting to serve his stop-go penalty, because you've got to do it in a few laps, because otherwise you would face disqualification. So I do believe the cars that are out still at the moment, they're still yet to do their driver change. Why so slow, I believe, has already done their driver change, I believe. And as you can see on the left, they have to do 3 stints, and now why so slow? Most of the GT4s actually have got from 3 to 2, and if it shows as green, that means that their team has done the required pit stops. And what's this replay? And I believe that's at the very start of the race. So they got a bit tangled up just before No Name, and again, with them going 3 abreast like that, one of them had to back off, and unfortunately hardly any of them did, and that's what costed that incident. So Whitehead is in, the number 66 is in of Van der Velde. We got Noah Koski in as well. Muscat, number 15, is in too, and I wonder if a few other people will respond to them as well. Don't forget, they don't have to rely on the GT4s, but they will have to pit within the next lap or so, and then the next driver will go in. So this is the move heading towards the source. I'm not quite sure what car it is. I think it was a move around the and there was just a bit of a tap, and he's got sent into a spin. How did that other car avoid that? I do not know, but that could have ended up worse.
Yeah, that could have been a lot worse than it was. But for the 5 car, they're in P3 now. I think that was the battle for second that we were alluding to might come out. But now that gap is extended because of that spin. They have got back into third. We saw they lost a position on that replay, but they got back into third now. So the 5 car running where they are. The 11 car actually, in that lap 1 incident, that was the car that got pushed wide. So they've been doing a pretty good job to fight their way back up through the field, up into 4th place. I wonder if they're going to be a bit of a dark horse here as we sort of approach the latter stages of the race, because just go all the way to the back from that incident. I think they lost 4 or 5 positions. That's a really good recovery from them, and there's a real potential if they can start to bridge that gap to the top 3, then it's to the top 2, and then maybe they could battle the gas heat for the win.
That could be very good. Now, I always like to see in racing, especially in ACC, battling going down to the wire. I don't like winners that get decided within like 5 minutes to go with a gap so close. So I hope Pink Stars could just claw the gap in again, and maybe with the next drive as well, that could be a perfect opportunity as well. This is 6:40 in the evening in game time, and it's not quite sunset yet. I remember commentating in Spa a couple of weeks ago in ACC when it was started off in the evening and went to dark, but I don't think the drivers will be experiencing that. Someone has gone off in the background. I think that is a GT4 car being lapped, so panic over there. So the GT3 cars are starting to approach the GT4 cars now. And in the karting world, Yassi is still leading, and we got the 7 car in P2. But we're having a nice upfit battle between the number 6 and the number 7 now. Right now as well, you can see the interval between Virtual Driving eScore and Why So Slow as well. And with I believe Why So Slow being a few tenths quicker each lap. So it looks like Why So Slow doing a lot better than Virtual Driving eScore right now in 7th. So even though they're a little bit further apart at the moment, it can make all the difference. And we're starting, I think, to see some of the drivers getting ready. And I did see a Porsche actually in the middle of the track, a real life Porsche in the kart in there as well. So I'm guessing they're getting a bit of a glimpse before they go into the ACC rigs later on, and the ones who are in the karts now.
Yeah, we're seeing that fastest lap from the 2 car was a 32.4, but we're looking through the field as the times ping up on the top left there. We're seeing a lot of 33s from the midfield, so it seems like there's a bit of a gulf between those drivers right at the front so far. That's why we're seeing those big air gaps form, where we've got drivers doing 32.4s, and I think there's a lot of 32.7s from those guys at the front, but the midfield down in the 33s. It's not quite the same in the GT3 race. It's a little bit closer, but there are gaps forming now between all these cars, but we have to remember there is going to be that driver swap coming. It is a little bit it's overdue, I think. We were expecting it to be around 25 minutes, but it looks like they're doing longer stints. So I'm not exactly sure why that is, but yeah, but they have. Well, we see actually now the 5 cars in, so they're doing the first stint. They did have a bit of damage from that spin earlier. I'd assume they had a bit of rear end damage, so maybe coming in a little bit earlier than the rest of the field, get that fixed, put a new driver in, and then they can go on from there. But no one else coming in yet, so it looks like those first drivers are extending, and maybe they can do shorter stints with the other drivers in the race.
Yeah, as long as they do the required stint time for all their drivers, then that's not a problem. It doesn't have to be 25 minutes exactly, and then boom, you go in the car. It is a long race, and obviously it's a chance for them to really start to bridge the gap. And oh, look at this battle between, I believe it's the number 5 car that we're on board with versus number 7 and second and third place. So it's hard to tell with this overlay, but I think that the ones in the greens are one that is having personal best times, I believe. I thought it was just them that we're on board with it. That's just hard to tell with the overlay sometimes. But yeah, this is for P2, and this could get very interesting. And I believe that yes, he has already changed their drivers in the car as well. So that is the battle for P1, not P2, because yes, he has probably come into the pits to do their driver swap.
Yeah, obviously it will eventually turn out to be second place once the pit stop sequence has changed. But yeah, Yassi finally coming in, getting their first stop out of the way. It looks like in both the sim and the karting world, they're extending those first stints, maybe keeping their fastest driver for longer, just to make sure that they get the most out of them. But I would assume now we're going to see a flurry of pit stops as the 9 cars in as well. Obviously, we've already seen the 5 car, and that's going to be 2 from those top 10 now, making that pit stop. So I think it's a matter of time before we see a flurry of GT3s in the pits. We see actually the entire GT4 field has already got that pit stop out of the way. So it's not too long before we see some action there. And I think maybe some of these strategies will be interesting to see if they pay out. The 5 car coming in early, there's not going to be much tyre wear doing a 25 to 30 minute stint. These tyres in GT3, they can do nearly 2 hours in theory if we look after them well enough. But there is with the way GT3 tyres work, there's a sort of a window in the tread. It's about the first 0.2 millimeters that is much faster though. It's a slightly softer tread than the rest of the wheel, or the rest of the tyre rather. So once you burn through that little bit of tread, the car will slow down noticeably by a couple tenths. So if you do make that earlier pit stop, obviously naturally the 5 car is going to be back on that slightly faster part of the tyre. So they should be putting in better lap times now than they were before the pit stop. And maybe they can get that undercut, or at least get closer to those guys in the front. Maybe get back into the slipstream, and then use that undercut to get a bit of track position.
Yeah, undercut is quite powerful around Spa, and if you make it work, then this could really gain you a lot of time. And sometimes though, it depends on the pace. So we are seeing some battles starting to form. I think this time is from, I believe, was it P? It's hard to keep track on these numbers in karting. I think some of you guys at home are probably as confused as we are, but I think with people going into the pit soon, I think that's where we're really just starting to see more moves being made now in the race, and they're not being as cautious anymore. And I believe Yassi is now back in the race lead after they made a pit. And I believe Splash and Dash, I can't read Russian, but I believe it's a 15-second penalty, or is it the pits? It's hard to tell.
It did look like a penalty that popped up. Obviously, it's in a Russian feed, so yeah, as you said, we don't know, but that looked like a penalty warning, so I'm going to assume you're probably right there. But yeah, they have also just entered the pits. They were obviously leading the race by virtue of not pitting, but now Yassi's taking that back over, taking their spot that they had claimed and sort of driven away in towards the start. In actually both fields, as we see now, the leaders are in. Both Yassi and Pink Stars are into the pits in the GT3s. Simrace GP as well, coming in from 8th place, have come into the pit lane. So we're starting to see that action now, starting to see that driver swap. And now this is going to be the important point for me to see whether, which teams are really the teams going to be fighting in the front. Because does Yassi just have that one driver, that's going to be faster than Pink Star's Virtually School, and obviously funny Formula 1 bats that have already come into the pits? If those cars put in a second driver that's a little bit faster, we're going to see that natural ebb and flow that you see with these driver swap races, and maybe we're going to get a battle for the lead.
Oh yes, I really do hope we do as well, because that is the best as well. And if they don't have a good pit entry potentially, and if they get like a pit exit, .go or speed in the pit lane, that could ruin their chances really before it's even begun, and that could be race over. So they're all heading in to the endurance pit lane, which is quite long. You lose pretty much half a lap alone almost, just by going into the endurance pit. I believe that's how much you lose in a GT3 car. Not entirely sure how much time you lose in a GT4 car when you go into the endurance pit. I think considerably more, but obviously GT4 is quite slower, and I assume that's half a lap as well. But more information soon. I think Simreal GP is in, and I think the only people that haven't gone in yet is Virtually School. They're still out. Splash and Dash have pitted earlier on as well. We'll see Splash and Dash get ahead of the ones that are just pitted. Not really, I think, Yassi, but for the other cars as well. We'll see the undercut has made the difference. And for some of these guys, they probably got damaged, so they probably have to pit for a little bit longer. So Benzino's still waiting in the pit box. As I think Yassi had just come out. And I thought they'd been doing our route, but the pit exit is just so close to that barrier. So that was very, very intense. That gave me a heart attack. But yeah, Yassi has taken the lead from Pink Stars. The gap still the same as they were when they exited the pit. So both of them coming out pretty much as the same place as they would have entered the pit lane as well. And I think Splash and Dash is going to be, I think, behind Benzino still. But with the GT4s, everyone has made their first stop now. So that's going to be just a battle to see how they're made of at the moment, with Adam battling Muscat for 18th position. 1.2 second gap at the moment. And I wonder what he's going to do to try and get past, because 1.2 is massive in GT4 terms. So I think it's going to be harder to do. But let's see if he's made of the right stuff. And I wonder if he could gain on the straights. If he gains on the straight in these Porsche GT4s, which is quite powerful, then this could be a gold mine for him. But it is quite hard at the moment. The gap is still stable though, so I think it's going to be a long while before we see overtakes from him. I think the GT4s, they're not making inroads at the moment. I think they're just finding a rhythm. As Virtual E-School is going into the pits now to make their stop. I believe they're the last out of everyone to pit, so they're going to drop down the order as everyone else goes past them very soon.
I'm surprised by just how much field spread we've got in both classes. There's a lot of big names in that GT4 field. I mean, Luke Whitehead is a guy I've raced quite a lot in GT4s. Well, I say I've raced. I've been on the same track as him. He was at the front, I was in the midfield. But, I was expecting him to be closer to Masick. I know how good Masick is at this track, but, to pull those, I mean, he's got about 12 seconds on Whitehead, 6 seconds on Nerby in second place there. I'm surprised by how big these gaps are early on in that GT4 field, but also in the GT3s. We've got 10-second gaps across the board pretty much. And it's the same actually in the karting. We have these huge gaps forming. The only sort of battle we really have right now is for that second place. But actually, no, the third place now as well has joined them. Oh no, I'm lying. I've lied. They've started to pull away now. I think something's happened maybe to the team that was in third, because I think it was the 7 car. Maybe there's a strategy difference here, but the 7 car at one point was right up there battling for second place, I believe. So unless they're off strategy or they've changed something up, something's gone amiss there. Come back here to the GT3s. The 5 cars looking a little bit lonely out there. They've got a pretty decent gap to the car in front and also to the car behind. I guess it's natural, right? You only got 10 cars. There's not that much battling that's going to be going on. So a lot of these guys are able to settle into that rhythm. And it's really going to be those driver swaps that are going to dictate when cars get back close together. after each pit stop. So for now, but as you were in both classes, and actually in all three classes, as everyone has sort of found their place, found their rhythm, and we're sort of trudging along until we, I think, get later on in the race where I expect we'll see some action.
Yeah, we always get that stage in modern racing, in solo racing, even solo endurance racing, where, and even sprint races, where it's busy at the start of the race, quite quiet in the middle, and towards the end, that's where we see the battles really come through as well. And I think that's just a mindset, really, that they don't really want to end their race now, because it will ruin their race for the drivers still to get in the car, because after this, they've still got 2 more drivers who have yet to really basically just get into the car, and they don't want their races ruined at the end of the day. Luckily, they can't damage carts, so at least they'll be able to get into the cart. And these carts are quite good to drive, not gonna lie as well. I wish I would have driven that in real life, but obviously these drivers get the opportunity at the moment. And this is a single engine car. I believe it's the GX200 Honda engine that these drivers are at the moment. So the 11 car that is in P2 at the moment, who just come out of the pits, I'm just seeing where they are on track. I think the numbers are different, because it says Virtual eSchool. Oh, they're in 8th place at the moment. It says they're number 1 in the kart, where compared to number 11 in ACC. So bit of a contrast. Pink Stars, third in the ATC world, and 5th in karting. Yassi, P1 in karting and in ACC. So keeping the consistency there. And we've got Benzino, 7th in karting, and P2. P7 in ACC and P2 in karting. So that is your update at the moment.
I'm impressed that the Yassi car has got the lead in both races. You know, they're very different driving styles. You know, GT3 and a karting car. Obviously, karts are used as sort of the training device, right, for young drivers. That is the first step, as you mentioned earlier, to actually racing. You know, you might go to sport cars or into open wheel, but it is a drastically different driving style. In those karts, you're looking to maintain momentum through corners, because the drive off, you know, you've not got much horsepower underneath you, so the drive off corners isn't that great. So you want to carry that minimum speed through the corner. You might take a slightly wider line, you might take a slightly different entry or exit to the corner just to maintain that speed. Whereas in this Porsche, especially in the GT3 Porsche, that car has so much drive off out of corners. It's so good at accelerating that you can afford to reduce that minimum speed. You know, you can go a little bit deeper on the brakes, but brake a little bit more in the corner, so that your car is, you know, perhaps gaining speed on entry, losing a bit of speed mid-corner, and then gaining on exit. But that's the complete opposite to where you want to be in a kart. It's all about smooth inputs. It's all about maintaining momentum in those karts. And it's quite impressive to me that Yassi team is so adeptly switching between the two. You know, obviously these drivers, all 4 of them have to do a stint in karts and a stint in ACC. And whilst I think what we're probably seeing is the best kart driver and the best ACC driver has done that long stint at the start, they still all have to get into both, and they still all have to put in some decent lap times if they want to win both races. We are also starting to see some battles form here. You know, we said we have that ebb and flow, but we've got a battle here now for 18th overall, which naturally will be 8th place for the GT4 class. We've got Sheldon Musker and Tariq Adam. Just about close enough that we could call it a battle. Obviously Adam about 3 tenths behind, not getting side by side yet, but there's also one going on in the GT3 field. I think it's for 4th and 5th. I know they've spread out a little bit now. They were closer, so I don't know if there's been an incident there, or if one car's maybe had a bit of a moment and has pushed the gap up. But we'll stick with this GT4 battle for now. I think it's really going to be about setting up that overtake into Lake Coombs, or even up into Eau Rouge. We saw that overtake earlier for the lead from the Yassi car, and they did it by getting that outside line and getting that acceleration out. You know, if you're in a car, normally you're looking for that inside line, right? You want to take the shortest way through the corner, and that's how you're going to get an overtake done. But if you're in this Porsche GT3 car, even the GT4 has it as well, because they're so good at accelerating, you could use those outside lines. You know, you can open the wheel up a little bit earlier when you're out there, you know, keep the car on your inside a bit closer to the wall so they can't quite get the acceleration down, and use that drive off the corner to make your overtake work. So it's very different the way you want to look for overtakes here, and I think that's why that move sort of outside in the source, coming up to a Rouge, that's going to be the important one for those overtakes to happen in this race.
Yeah, that's where I think most drivers will even think about it, because somewhere else in the track, I think, is taking a very, big risk as well. And we even see drivers go side by side before you go up the hill, and that's very brave in a sense as well. And you've got to be committed. If you decide that you're going for the move and then a few seconds later you're not, then it's too late. That's probably where accidents can happen. But these drivers are there for a reason. They know what they're doing, as I think we can see the number 5 car, funny Formula 1 bats, battling with the number 6 car for 6th position, Benzino. He almost cut the corner there past Lecom there as well, but I don't think you can get a move there, as this is quite an understeery part of the track, but he's going to have a try at least to go for it, which can be done in a Formula 1 car, which it's a lot easier to do than the GTs around here to try and get some moves done. But you're starting to see the GT4 battling in the same way. They potentially could go side by side in our Rouge. We've got the 15 car of Muscat versus I believe the 99 car of Adam going up the hill into our Rouge and Radeon. And we haven't seen that many troubles in our Rouge actually this race, which is great to see. I think the main troubles that we've had is through Lecom area and into Brussels. I think that was is where
meeting on pit entry. He came in. I think he's trying a bit of strategy to get that that second pit stop, do it super early and get it out of the way. And then he only has one left to do, so he's doing a little bit earlier than that. I think I guess it is about halfway through the race. But he sped on entry, which is pretty easy to do here at Spa because there's no marker in that really tight pit lane you have. There's no sort of marker you can use as your braking point, so you just have to kind of remember it. But I mean, he is a driver that's raced here quite a lot, so he's probably the last person on the grid I'd expect to stop go 30 from. But yeah, that has happened from him. He's down now in 20 seconds.
So I think they're going to go at it once again as Adam comes in now. And don't forget, for those of you that just joined us, we've got 10 teams which have 4 drivers. They have to do 25-minute stint each in ACC and in the kart. As one car is actually stopped on track, actually. It might be a driver swap or a car. No, it's a kart change. Is it a kart change?
Yes, kart change.
Yeah, that is interesting. I wonder if the kart's broken or something like that. They're just trying to get it fixed, and or they might trying to get it started as well. And I think we're seeing a crowd there in the karting, so spectators are allowed, of course, and because some restrictions are lifted in Russia, so they are allowed. And what kart is that stopped? Now the numbers have changed. I do not have a clue now which kart that was affected. So I think it was the number 4 car that had a bit of trouble. Why not? No, it's not the 4. It's hard to tell with this overlay, but
might be the 7.
Hopefully the car will go back into the race and get some close action underway. But we'll keep up to date with that. With 51 minutes gone already, and Yassi still leading by, look at it, 20.6 seconds. That is I've done karting before, and 20.6 seconds is massive in go-karting.
Yeah, that's a heck of a lead. I mean, it's a 33-second lap, so they've basically done 2/3 of a lap extra than the rest of the field. So there's a very real chance that they'll finish ahead of everyone else. We're seeing 33s right now from the 8 car. As we were saying earlier, the 32s are sort of the front pace, and you can see that interval is slowly but surely creeping up. So I think that Yas Heat car is still in the 32s, which is pretty impressive pace, I must say. So it's really nice to see that. I would prefer to have a battle for the lead, but I mean, if you've got that pace, if you're that much faster than the rest of the field, fair enough.
Yeah, and if you're like me and do karting, you're probably going to be like a few laps down straight away, to be honest. But I usually do it for a bit of fun. I don't usually race competitively, to be honest, as well. So, I think there will be certain drivers that are a few laps down already, and they need to get back into the groove early on, and the timings will take a while to update, because it may say that they are a lap down, but they're not for some of these drivers. And some of the GT4s, they're coming in again, so that is the 992 or Malinowski. Van der Velde is in as well. Nunowski, the 125's in, and Pirella, number 43, is in. Still yet to make the stop is Muscat, which are running on board now, on Marathi. And but we got Yazvav Honzik, they've come in, Adam as well, and Durkop apologies again if I get those names wrong. They have come in for their second stop. They'll have to do one more stop in this race of GT4s. They can do it whenever they want, and that will be their stints done. And then once their stints done, the green will show. It won't be yellow anymore. It will show green, which means that they don't have to pit again. But for the GT4s, the GT3s, it will work slightly differently.
Yeah, no. Starting to see, I think, Muscat get a little closer to Whitehead. It seems to me that he's slowly creeping up that gap, and it is still a fairly hefty gap. Don't get me wrong, it's a very big one right now to that 21 car, but there's a potential. Maybe if Whitehead has a small incident, we might get a race at least for that position. But Malinovsky obviously making that pit stop now. He's down in fourth place, but that will come back to first place after the pit stops in the rest of the field. Everyone's starting to get that second last pit stop in, at least in the GT4 world. The GT3s, I think, are going to leave it a little bit longer and maybe do a short final stint for perhaps the guy that's less confident in the simulator world. I'm seeing now that we come back to the karts here. The intervals, I think, are bugged out a little bit, so we can't quite see what the gap is now to second place from the leaders. But we see, I think it's at least down to fourth place now. It's been lapped, or at least that's a lap difference, I think, to third place, because these are the intervals we're seeing. That's a big gap for the fourth car. We've actually, I think, have we seen a pass there for second place, or is the interval just updated? I'm not really sure, because we're not following that battle right now on track. Yeah, it was just the interval updating, so I think maybe there's a transponder issue somewhere. But we did see that swap for the transponder, so maybe that's giving us a hint of which car it was.
It is hard to tell, actually, what car or contact there as well. I do believe in karting. In the karting world, at least I get that as well. You do get contact warnings sometimes, and if you get too many sometimes, well, when you go karting in England, you do get a black flag, and I believe it's the same here. As you don't really want to make it is a contact-free sport, and you don't want to cause someone to ruin their race, so they got to be careful on that front. But track limits, at least they don't have to worry about, because if they exceed track limits around karting, they're in the barriers, and you don't really want that, and it's hard to keep going as well. So 44 minutes left on the clock, and the leaders has come in for their next stint, and there will be changing drivers, and there will be some drivers that will be having a break now, and then they'll be getting into the kart for the final stint, or they may have done the karting already on their final stint now. So very, very important that they get in these laps done as quickly as they possibly can in order to help their team out a little bit. We also got I'm just seeing who else is going in. I think there's one team that's gone in, which was the funny Formula 1 bats. They've done their second driver change, and I think the other team is Why So Slow. All the other GT3s have still got to make their second stop and their second driver change. So that is the case. An update at the moment, and I think flying about for the GT4, so it may just be a car being lapped. It's hard to tell. No, it's actually 125 versus the number 9. So the 125 of Noraki challenging, I believe it's a GT3. So the GT3 must be struggling out there at the moment, because if the GT4 is able to keep up with the GT3, then something must be up with the number 9 car.
I think they were the car that had the stop-go, if I remember correctly, so that's pushed them.
Yes.
If you get a stop-go plus 30, that is basically an entire lap you're losing. So they put themselves back. They have also made an extra pit stop, at least versus Shadow Muscat, who currently leads by virtue of the fact he doesn't pit. But, it's going to be a little bit, perhaps unsettling for these. It's never nice to be overtaken, even when you're blue flagged for by GT3 if you're a GT4. But when you have one that's coming through for position, you don't necessarily get those blue flags. And it can be a little bit disorienting, because especially with the fact that everyone's in a Porsche, right? You might look in your mirrors and not realise it's a car that's not in your class because you don't get those blue flags. So hopefully nothing comes of that, and the 9 car can get through there nice and safely, not really cause any issues with the guys running right at the front in that GT4 field. But we come back to the lead here. Splash and Dash coming in for their second last pit stop. We've already obviously had the As-Heat car, which just dropped down to 6th by virtue of having that stop. As these strategy calls come in, it's intriguing to see that this pit stop's happening now. We're still a little bit over. You'd expect the second to last pit stop would happen with 50 minutes left, because it'd be halfway through the race. So you'd have basically split the race into 25s. We saw that really long first stint. So it kind of feels like a lot of these teams are posturing for that really short final stint. Maybe throw someone in that's perhaps their faster kart driver, and the guy that did the longest stint at the start of the karts. We see one of the carts there, one of the karts rather, getting a little bit stuck on the hairpin, but he did get going in the end, so no harm done, but maybe a little bit of lap time lost. I don't think there's any damage on that kart, so just a momentary pause, a little break, which is not something you get very often in the karting world, as he got the front of his car hooked on the inside of that hairpin. You see just how tight you have to get to those walls. You really have to be so precise, especially in indoor karting where there's no curb on the inside, there's no runoff on the outside. It is a wall on both sides. It is like racing a street circuit, which I guess you could technically call it a pavement circuit. It's not much different to what you might expect in a real life street circuit, in a tin top or in an open wheel car.
Yeah, but sometimes even those small changes between a car and the sim rig sometimes can be very, very challenging, because the karting is the first step into racing for some of these guys, and now we have a situation where not many people have gone into karts. They've mainly done sim racing, so the whole different ball game. I remember when I first started watching motorsport that there was no sim racing, and if people wanted to do racing, they would have to do karts. That's pretty much it. And it's nice that more people are getting these opportunities now to get some racecraft experience before they do it for real, and that produces some closer racing in the karts because of it. And I think more karting venues of what across the world are probably going to be potentially getting busier once restrictions ease in some places, because I know not all countries in the world have had the luxury of being allowed to open their venues yet. I know obviously in Russia and in Scotland, I believe, as well, in Wales, Northern Ireland potentially as well, they are allowed to go karting again, which is a lifeline for some of these drivers. But for sim racing, like last year, it was definitely a lifeline to get those drivers practicing in terms of their racecraft, ready for when they go racing again for real very, very soon. And it just changed the whole world of sim racing last year as well. I think more drivers in real life even now came to understand why sim racing was just so important. Even Lewis Hamilton said in Formula 1 that he spent a little bit more time on the simulator as well, because that just improves your awareness and of the track just so much, and know where you can gain so much time. So I think this is what we're experiencing with this Simreal Cup, that we're starting to see the differences now, but they're not in Spa in the karting, they're in Russia, so a whole different ball game. But it's going to take a while for some of these guys, but it should be interesting. We've done 1 hour of this event, and we've got 39 minutes of this race, of this event still to go, and still plenty of opportunities for drivers to make some moves. As I think the car in P2 has found, I think, a second on P1, and now Yassi has gained a second on them again, so the gap is now still 20.4 seconds.
Yeah, the 8 car was doing the 34s there, so I guess we're slowing down because obviously they're not doing tyre swaps in the karting race. They don't have the luxury of being able to swap tyres every 25 minutes like you do in the sim world. So the cars will slowly be getting slower over the race. It's not going to be much because karting tyres are extremely hard, and they're designed to last a very long time. But the time shouldn't change too much, as I'm getting pointed out by the lovely mic in my ears, that obviously we're burning fuel as we go through the race. So your time should relatively hold. You shouldn't really be losing too much, but we are seeing a little bit slower, I think. I wonder if that's actually the driver swap, right? We saw that longer first stint in both karts and GT3. So I'm assuming that all the teams have sort of worked out who their fastest driver is in both, and said, well, you're going to do a long stint in karting, you're going to do a long stint in ACC, and that's going to be how we get the most time. And so that's, I think, why we're seeing now, obviously, the RC car doing a 32.3 that time round, and we're seeing 34s from the 4th place car, number 3. They're a little bit, about half a second slower than what they were doing earlier, but I think that's just from the driver swap.
Yeah, I think that's what we've come into grips with at the moment, because we're not really seeing the drivers in the karting, so it's hard to tell if they've been in, but we are looking at the timings as we speak, and if they've dropped massively, then yeah, there's probably a driver swap. And I think there's some anxious faces waiting in the venue as to how their team. Some people have already done both stints, so they're anxiously waiting on, hang on, where would my team fit into this as well. But we still got the GT4 race, which is happening simultaneously to this as well, as the sun is starting to set at Spa-Francorchamps right now in game time as I head towards Longchamp with this lovely camera that we're seeing right now. But we're seeing the 120 car of Nonoraski battling with, I think it's Parada, the number 43, in 14th overall and 15th overall. So they're now going to the start-finish straight. Not that long to go then of this race. And we're not getting as much action in Formula One, but at least we're getting action in these type of races. So if you're stuck on what to do, well, your friends are stuck what to do, tell them to watch this racing, because it's a lot more fun than just watching cars stationary in the pits for about a few hours. So get them to watch this, because it's exciting.
Yeah, we're not bound by the rain in
exactly.
In the simulated world. Even with flooded conditions, there's not going to be a red flag, so these guys would have to power through it. Obviously, we don't have the safety issues, which is the wonderful thing I think about sim racing, is you can race in weird conditions. You can do sort of wacky races almost, where you throw in conditions. As David Pearl just got another stop go. He has. He's not going to hit the end of that from this. He's got a second one.
He's 8 laps down now on 21st.
To be fair to him, those 8 laps, I think, are to the leader, not to the next car. So he should be. I mean, he's going to be quite a ways off with 2 stop goes, but should be that as far as it perhaps looks. But yeah, that's unfortunate to get 2 of them in one race. But at one point we saw him up in 15th place, I think. So it's a bit of a shame, because he was on for a really good race. He started last, had a really good first stint, and obviously in the GT4s, it's only one driver. It's a solo race, so you don't have that ebb and flow that we were talking about in GT3s, where you throw in a slower driver or a faster driver for specific stints, and you can start to gain some time back, which we're starting to see with that 10 car, is making their way through and catching up to that 6 car for potentially the last spot on the podium. But you don't see that in the GT4s, because it's every driver, is staying in for the whole thing. So the only time that you see that ebb and flow happen is perhaps when drivers make mistakes, or with strategy differences, which is admittedly minimal. You don't see that much strategy change in a 3-stop 100-minute race, because the tyre wear is minimal, the fuel consumption is not a big issue. But as we're seeing the end of this race, we are actually seeing those groups happen again. We're seeing the Novakovsky catch up to Perella, as we pointed out earlier there, and there's only 3-4 second gaps around. We've got a smaller gap as well between Musk and Adam, who have been next to each other the entire race. I wonder if we might get another battle there for the later part of this race. But this battle for third, the F1 Memes car looks really fast right now. They've been catching Benzino, the number 6 car, very quickly. Been really closing up the gap, and I think we're about to have a big battle here for third place. How long it's going to last, I'm not sure, because it seems that they've got a lot of overspeed right now. They've caught up a couple more tenths there as we switch quickly to Benzino and funny Formula Wombat. Benzino car actually getting overtaken there, I think, as Wombat goes up the inside into the hairpin there. So Benzino falling back in the karting race, but they are going forward now in GT3, and they're posturing for that third place. I think they've got a real shot at this. Only half a second. They'll get a couple tenths here from that slipstream going through Blanchemont up to that bus stop. I think there's a real opportunity here for a move to be set up, perhaps not into Eau Rouge, but if they can get a good run up the hill through Raidillon, perhaps there's an opportunity here for a pass in Les Combes.
Here we go then. I think that is where I think we're going to start to see the 30-minute mark. Everyone's going to go all guns blazing now, and I think Eau Rouge will be the best place to do it, heading into Les Combes, into the up the hill as well. But I think as the time start to tumble, as the laps get quick, you've got to be consistent in terms of the race. You can't just be good in one lap and that's it. If you're not good in all other laps apart from one, then you're going to lose so much time. So that is why consistency is key in any class in ACC, and that's what's going to push you to gain the positions, just like the 125 car is doing on the number 43 car, and also the number 66 car Van der Velde is also doing exactly the same thing. So again, the number 9 car, who is struggling a lot out there right now. So 32 minutes left on the clock. Still Yassi still leads, and it won't be that long before everybody will do their final driver swaps, and then that'll be basically a sprint to the finish, which is always exciting. And luckily, no, I think the track looks optimum at the moment. Temperature is around 22 degrees, both air and track, and the wind right now is steady 1 kilometre, so that at least they don't have to the trail wind, which is on the track right now, has think David is still in the pits, unfortunately. So what a shame there. But yeah, I think let's see if we can see some moves being made in the last 30 minutes or so. And in the karting as well, I think that can get even more tasty. I think it could be even more closer.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping that we'd have a bit of weather variation in this race, because that's the big difference in indoor karting versus outdoor karting. Right? The indoor one, weather's a non-factor. It can't rain indoors naturally if you've got a roof. There's not going to be any wind because there's walls, so you're always at a very similar temperature as well. So those kind of things, the track temperature will be fairly consistent. The actual ambient temperature, there's no wind, there's no rain. When you come into that simulated world, one of the great things about the simulated world is you can make unpredictable weather. And you can set it up to what we're seeing in real life in Spa and have a lot of rain. But it looks like today we've had those nice sunny conditions that I think perhaps a lot of F1 fans are hoping for, or were praying for about an hour ago in that race. But with that lack of variation in the Spa race, I think we've lost something that perhaps would have made, I think, it a little bit more interesting if we'd not even had rain but had a bit of variation in temperatures. But for now, both races being pretty consistent, pretty stable. We see actually here a battle for, I think it's fourth place, sorry, as the 5 car is starting to make some inroads for that position. I think actually we see one back get ahead of Benzino at one point, so it looks like the position's been returned. I'm not quite sure what's happened. We see behind them the car is actually catching them, the number 4 car. So a little bit faster this time around than the guys ahead of them, so they're slowly catching up, and maybe we're going to see that late fight for 5th, for 4th place, and perhaps even a fight for the podium if they can close that gap up.
Yep, exactly. So we are still some side-by-side battle going, actually. Hopefully it's not a lapped car. And I think we're starting to see the gap being clawed back by about almost 1.5 seconds. So that's insane right now. I think we're starting to see laps in the 32s, but why not slow? And the number 7, well, times are getting quick. I think we're seeing the number 8 car in the 34, same with the number 3 car as well. The number 3 car, coincidentally, in P3, so that's interesting. And Yassi is just on fire in these karts right now. 23.5 seconds. The team has found 3 seconds, so they must have a fast guy. Pretty much they have a fast team in the car right now. So very, very, very impressive team so far. And why not slow? Saying a personal best there in the karts. And going back to the ACC action, Benzino all of a sudden is having a very stellar race in the ACC. I believe they were 6th and now 3rd, but I believe some of the teams have boxed, or no, it's actually some drivers are actually struggling at the moment. Funny Formula 1 bats has come in for their final stop, and Benzino definitely the team of the race so far.
Yeah, they're really starting to fly now and make that pace up. They're actually, I think there's a potential that we might actually see a battle for 2nd place, because the gap's not that big. If we look to the 6th and 8th, where is the 8 car now? They just come out of Radion. It's a hard task, right? Making that gap up in 30 minutes is a big gap to make. But they're doing, we see at the bottom right here, their best time 2:18.5. Last time round they were 2:19.3. They're pretty good race pace. I mean, we were seeing 17s in qualifying. It was hotter conditions, but they're only about 1.5 seconds slower than what they were doing in quali in the race now, which is usually, I mean, it's a little bit slower than perhaps you'd want to be. Usually you want to be about 1 second off in GT3. If you're about 1 second off what you did in qualifying, then you're bad on pace, right? That's about where you want to be with a tank of fuel in. But they're still looking pretty fast. 18s, and if they can get back into the 18s, they'll be making some progress. I've been intrigued to go through the field. I mean, we look here, they're doing 2:21s last time round for the car in 5th, the 11 car. There was one car that at one point, we saw that early crash they had in No Name that put them quite far back, and they made a charge back through the field, got all the way to the 5th, and now they're sort of stalled out. I think, obviously they're very close to the 10 car, but doing 2:21s, I don't think they're going to be making too much progress anytime soon.
No, not really. And you're now seeing more green teams at the moment have done their stops. So I think that will put the pressure on everybody to get their stops in as quickly as they can. And if they do their stops either too early or too late, that could really change the course of the race. Because don't forget the undercut with the laps as well. You're losing over half a lap just in the pit stop alone due to the endurance pit. So if you mess it up and have maybe a stop go like we were saying earlier, that can end your race. So yes, even though they're leading at the moment by quite some margin in both races, they cannot become complacent down in first place, because they got Splash and Dash, who's had a good comeback as well, and Benzino as well, and the order's starting to change a little bit in terms of these teams. So you know, you don't get points in qualifying, you get it in the race. As you can see some of the drivers in the background just getting their helmets off. I believe some of them are either getting into the car or have done their kart stint. So they're just watching their team right now so far. And I think we could start to see, yeah, see, they're just increasing the gap again. They're just dominating this race like no tomorrow right now. But I think I would like to actually see with the karting how much positions they've gained, because that would have been great to see, because we didn't actually get to see qualifying, so we don't know where they qualified. But and yes, he, our race leader again, they were the first to pull the trigger last time in the last pit stop. They were the first to pull the trigger again.
Yeah, they're going to get their last stop out of the way, get their last driver in. They've got a big enough gap that it's not a massive issue if they, you know, if their last driver is a bit slower. That's the virtue of having that big gap. Is, you know, if your last driver is doing 221s like we're seeing with these cars, over a 25-minute race where you're doing what's that, about just over 10 laps, it'll be about 12 laps now to the end of the race. If you're only losing 2 seconds a lap and you've got a 30-second lap lead, the guys behind you aren't going to catch you, so it doesn't really matter how fast their last driver is. Now they've just got to bring it home, keep the car on track, and then they should be good. We're seeing a battle here now. The F1 memes car is starting to make some proper inroads on the 11 car. We were saying they were doing 221s, but actually it seems to be the sort of running theme in this midfield right now. Everyone seems to be around that pace. The F1 memes car is slowly getting closer to virtual e-school. They're getting, or the virtual driving e-school, sorry, I should say. The full name is down in the bottom right. They're getting there slowly but surely. Is just opening up. I think actually that it kind of looks like the 10 car has more downforce, because even on the straights they're actually getting the 11 cars pulling away. So the slipstream's really not helping the 10 car coming out of Radeon. I don't know whether they're getting a bad run through Radeon, which is always possible in the Porsche, which can be quite twitchy through there. The rear of the car likes to unload itself over that sort of rise, and it can get quite scary if you don't get the line right. But it kind of looks like right now the 11 car just pulls away on the straights, and then as we come through sector 2, the 10 car pulls it all back again.
There you go then. So I think we're starting to see sector 2 having a little bit of a moment for some of the drivers, and for some others, people are doing very, very well. So I think with the different ability of some drivers in some teams as well, I think that is why some of the gaps are a little bit more closer. And I think for some teams they put their fastest driver in the end as well, because they got faster drivers. Well, no, actually they may have got their faster drivers at the start, but some drivers may have opted to go for their fastest drivers at the end, so they could really start to push. But I don't have a clue what's going on right now in terms of why they've chosen those stints. But it's starting to close in for the podium spots, which could mean everything, because this cup and points mean everything to these drivers. So, and with Yas Heat already pitting, this put a lot of pressure for the ones that haven't pit, as seeing virtual e-school really starting to, I think, feel the pressure. I wouldn't want to be in their shoes right now with a podium in sight, because that could all fail by a drop of a hat with how dangerous some corners are around this circuit.
Yeah, we're starting to see those different strategies, as you were alluding to. Obviously, Yas Heat, funny Formula 1 bats are in, and it's going to be interesting to see, I think for the 5 car at least, you know, where they come out, because they were near the cars. There was a bit of a couple second gaps here or there, but getting onto those new tyres earlier, you know, that it might just give them a little bit of time to at least get towards the slipstream of the cars that are also going to pit. And if they got their pit stop right, if they've, you know, made a bit of time up on pit entry or got a good pit exit, there's a real opportunity here that they might make the jump and get an extra position and maybe fight for those last spots. But now we're slowly seeing the 10 car creep up. They got a better run through Radeon that time. They didn't lose too much time on the straight. They actually gained a little bit, but they couldn't quite get close enough. They're not getting close enough out of La Source. That's the real issue. It seems like for now the 11 car has that final sector down. You know, they're getting through those last corners here, from sort of Pool for Air through that bus stop as well at the end of the lap, and that's where they're putting the gap. But the 10 car gets back close to them through Lake Coombs here. They're really looking close, but it's so hard to get an overtake done in sector 2. The only real way you can get it done is if the car ahead of you makes a mistake. And I mean, sector 2, there's a lot of places you can make a mistake as we come up towards Poo on that diving left-hander as you go down the hill. in, I mean, third or fourth gear, depending on how brave you are. But the 10 car can get quite close here, but it just seems to lose out through the last part of the lap. We'll see. I think if we can stay on board, hopefully, we should see for the rest of the lap just exactly where it is that F1 Memes Racing are falling behind. Because it always seems to be that they get close, and then the gap opens up again, and then they get close, and they just can't quite make those final tenths up. We actually see them lose 3 tenths there, coming out of the final chicane. So that might be it, really. That might be the corner where they're struggling, that switch of direction. The only other place that's like that is Lake Coombe. So, I mean, I guess in the bus stop as well, using the roll of the car. So it might just be a little setup difference. That's meaning the 10 car makes up that time in those swooping corners. It makes up the time in the braking zone, but it loses it a little bit on the straights. It loses it a little bit with that direction change. And that's just keeping the 11 ahead so far. I want to kind of see maybe if the 10 goes for a strategy change. Are they going to pit early? Yeah, they are. They're going to come in. They're going to dive into the pit lane now, get it out of the way early on, and maybe make that undercut work on the 11 car.
Wow, so I think the ones that haven't decided to go for that undercut probably shaking in their boots right now. F1 Means Racing has pulled the trigger. They're not going to be ahead of Yas Heat because Yas Heat has pulled the undercut of dreams, but we're going to watch and see if they're going to be potentially, they could get maybe a second place out of all this, or even third or even stay in fourth position because of that situation. So, and that'll be their final, I think that'll be their final stop, and that will be a sprint to the finish now for these guys. And splash and dash, they'll literally be doing a splash and dash literally very, very soon when they're going into the pit. Sim Race GP has also gone in. We saw Pink Stars, they have boxed, Funny Formula Wombats we were talking about earlier, and Yas Heat, they have just come out. So I think we've still got a few more teams yet to do their mandatory stop. In terms of the GT4s, Van der Velde still is in the pits. Muscat still yet to do their stop. Yazaf Honzik, still yet to box. Muscat still yet to box, as well as Whitehead and Nerby. But seeing the number 125 car under pressure from Pirello, as it seems, the number 43 car into that source then. This is where the battle is really heating up. We did say earlier it's going to get busier towards the end, and boy, we were right there.
Yeah, this is the time of the race where, if someone has 2 tenths in their back pocket that they're reserving because, perhaps they have to push in the corner and they're not comfortable doing it over the full course of the race with, 20, 15 minutes left, that's when they're going to start pulling out those, they're going to start going a little bit deeper on the brakes, going to start looking for that tiny bit of lap time and see if they can make a position up, especially if you're Novakovsky right behind Pirelli here. You've got to need a second gap. There's a real chance that, if you can perhaps gain some time as these GT3s come through the field and, if you can get that blue flag move out of the way, save some time doing that, and perhaps the 43 loses time, get right into that slipstream, there's a real shot there for you to make another overtake. And whilst this might be the only real close battle we're going to have on the field right now, as we wait for everyone to cycle through in those pit stops, I think there's a real shot that we might see this battle between Pirello and Novakovsky explode over the rest of this race.
Yes, and I believe the leader in the karts as well is being is pretty much lapped pretty much most of the field already, apart from I think the guy in the team in P2. They've lapped the entire field, so that I think is incredible from Yas Heat to absolutely do that. Like we said, 33 seconds is the average lap time around here, so that is incredible. But I think just looking at the times, a lap ahead and 17.9 seconds. That is almost 2 laps ahead if they can push on those lap times. That is insane.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I wouldn't be surprised, yeah. And why not slow? All of a sudden, I'm not sure if they made their next stop. They are in P3 right now onto the podium, and the car's just stopped and they're waving their hand in shame and they're wanting to get the marshal. I wonder, can the camera actually get in shot as to what number it is, please? That would be lovely. And I don't think they are. Yeah, he's very frustrated. I think the team is as well. And it's not like GT3s where you can reverse the car. You can't really do that. You have to get the marshal to do it for you. So they must have taken a wrong turn and lost the concentration.
Yeah, and that's going to be a lot of time lost there, as they're going to have to wait for the marshal to help them out, as you said, help them get out of the position they're in. The marshal actually is the one that's put it into the wall. But right now, obviously, they move the transponder so they know which car it is who's crossed the line. You know, so the guys will have to wait, get that put in, and that's going to be a lot of time lost. But, you know, I'd rather see people getting card swaps than have to retire from the race if they have issues. It is a nice change of paces. They're going to need, I think he's going to need some help to get out. He might be able to get out himself. As I'm trying to see on the track map, I don't see the dot, so I can't work out who it is. There's no dot that's not moving, which is intriguing considering the car isn't. I think it might be the 10 car, as we see them get going now. They're actually down in last place, so if it is the 10 car, then it's not going to have a massive effect on the race. I think maybe they might have dropped a position from that. Actually, no, I think it's the 3 car, because we'll see the lap there, the 1:38 lap come in, which so they've lost just over a minute, which will have cost them positions, because they were a couple of places up. They've actually where did they drop to? They dropped, I think, 3 positions from that, just from that minute loss. So that's a real shame for them. Completely out of their control, not something that they can change, and lose that spot, which sucks to see, but those things happen in motorsports.
Yeah, and I've been there as well, where I've had a spin in karting, which I was doing well to chase down the car in front for a position, and then when I made that mistake, I was a lap down and 2 laps down again. So that just cost so much time there as well. So, and Splash and Dash have gone. Oh no! I was going to say they've gone in, but I think they got a drive-through for speeding out of the pits, I think. Yeah, they have. So a drive-through. They have to come in very, very soon. But let's touch base on that in a minute. F1 Means Racing is having some battles right now. I believe it's laps. Okay, so Yassi is about to lap them. That got me confused there for a second there.
Yeah, that's really rough, because they are going to lose a position from that. I think this is the worst track to get a drive-through at, because not only do you have to go through the F1 pits, and which obviously exited at La Source, but you also have to keep going up the 24-hour pits, all the way in that pit limiter, up the straight there to Eau Rouge, through to Radion, and then you can come off the pit limiter. But you actually lose time all the way down the Kemmel Straight as well, because you're accelerating so late. So that is a big penalty. You're going to lose nearly a minute, really, just from that drive-through. So that's going to push them down. I think they're only going to lose 1 or 2 positions, because the gaps are big enough that it's not going to be a massive issue for them. But we see it's about a 33-second gap down to 3rd place, so they will lose that. Benzino will move up to 3rd place. But that battle that we were seeing for 4th place earlier between the 11 and 10 car, which actually seems to have spread out a bit as the 10 car has fallen off slightly, if they can get back up to them, there's a very real shot here that we'll have a battle for the podium. It was actually the 11 cars just slowed there, let the 10 car through. Not quite sure whether that was something they'd been told to do through it might have been an incident that we didn't see that's forced the 11 car to concede the position, but the 10 car now takes over 4th, and with that drive-through, it's about a minute between the 8 and the 10 car. There's a very real chance that could have been the pass for the P3.
Yeah, that could have been as well, and I think without Splash and Jass's drive-through, that would have been a podium. So I think there's their podium positions down the drain, and Benzino will get a podium, which the fact that they started 7th or 8th, that's an incredible achievement. I think we're starting to see, I think, people gaining quite a few positions when they're starting positions, and that is all because they kept it tidy. I think I have to say, fair play to all these drivers, because majority of them have kept it clean throughout the whole race in ATC, and it's very hard to do in Belgium in these GT3s and GT4 cars. So good job to them so far, and it's not that long to go to the end. It is getting cooler in terms of the track at the moment, as we're starting to see more lapped cars in the fray, and I think we're starting to see some shadows pop off as well, so it may have a difference with the braking zones as well, potentially as well. So Splash and Dash, they're in now, serve their drive through, which is what a shame, because they could have been on for P2, but now it looks like it's an easy win for Yassi. But never say never. Do not become complacent.
I mean, Yassi could still get a drive-through, and they'd lose the lead there as well, because I don't think they've quite pulled a minute gap. But if you watch on that track map on the right, you can see the 8 car with that greyed out circle. They're in the pit lane. They have to come all the way up to where that 38 car is stopped before they can come off the pit limiter. And we're following the 10 car here. We're going to really see, I think both the 10 and the 11 are going to get past the 8 here just by virtue of that drive-through. They might just about come out in front of the 5 car, but there's a real shot here that they could lose 4 positions out of this. We just keep track as we come through La Source here. They're definitely going to get past the 8 car now. As they pass it here, we'll see the red dot go past the grey dot, and that will signify that move for P3. So the 10 car goes up from 4th to 3rd place onto the podium. 11 car's going to pass as well, and that's a really tough break for the 8 car. That drive-through will have been because of track limits, which I already said earlier is down to those 4 off tracks that you get. If you go off track and you gain advantage, so for example, if you cut on the inside of Radeon, or if you go wide on the exit of Radeon and you don't lift off slightly, both of those will give you a track limits warning. If you get 4 over the course of the race, get a drive-through, you lose about a minute because of that pit stop. We'll see now they come out just behind the 5 car, so the 8 car has lost 4 positions because of that drive-through. There's from 2nd to 6th, yeah. So they'll lose 4 positions in the end of it, which is a real tough break as they move pretty much halfway down the GT3 grid.
Yes, so the drive-through, yeah, it's almost cost almost half a lap in a way, as well as I think the drive-through loses you more time than a stop go penalty. So that is now 6th position, so they've lost 4 or 5 places. So there's a car that's gone off. That is, I can't tell which car is stationary because literally the label has disappeared. But again, it's another car, a kart change, I believe, as well. So
it was the 8 car. It's the 8 car. They were in the podium. They were on the podium, so they're going to lose.
It's Splash and oh no! Please don't tell me it's Splash and Dash.
Yes, both races.
The unlucky team. They just got a drive-through in ACC, and they had a bit of a crash in karting. What is? Why has it happened? I do not know. What is there to stop the bad luck that is happening for Splash and Dash? What a shame. They could have got a podium there as well. And
yeah, they lost out on both podiums.
They're in 6th in both races now. I am heartbroken for them. Oh, and there's contact there from someone else. I think we're starting to see, I think, the fatigue of some of the show, and we've only got about 10 minutes to go now, and it's the number 9 car in P6 at the moment that is setting the fastest lap of the race, 32.358 now. And for most of these guys, they're on, I believe they've the marshals have put enough fuel to last the 100 minutes. Is that correct? I'm not entirely sure.
So I would assume.
Good.
Yeah. So so this is why we're now seeing finally them speed up a bit. Obviously, I think we had the fastest drivers in right at the start. You know, that's normally what you do. So we see a nice overtake there into the hairpin. It makes sense to put your fastest driver in at the start because that's naturally when you can make up the most positions. And also, if you get that big gap at the start, you know, as we saw with the IC, I mean, it becomes unassailable very quickly. So we are you'd assume the slightly slower drivers now, but you know, with that weight going, with the fuel being burned off through the race, I think we're starting to see those cars become faster and faster as the sort of the loss in weight outdoes the minimal tire wear that you get on a kart. And now we're seeing that, you know, we saw, what was it, P6, they got the fastest lap time, but there's little battles going on. We saw that battle for 8th and 9th that was turned into a bit of contact there. It's nice to see still that they're fighting for that. You know, sometimes when you're down near the back of the grid and you know there's 10 minutes left, you sort of just give up, right? You just say, we'll just bring it home. You know, you'll slow down a bit, you won't take any risks. But I like the fact that they're still trying, they're still pushing for those individual spots, and at least for the sort of mental knowledge that I can fight these guys, I can make overtakes work in this race. We might even see here past the 5 cars making some nice progress. So they gained P5 by virtue of that drive-through for the 8 car, and there's a real chop here at 4th place. As the 11 cars really slowed down, we saw them pull off to the side and give that position up to the 10 car. I'm not quite sure why they had to do that. We didn't see an incident. It's actually the 5 car's going to go very wide there. Ooh. A really nice catch there by the driver of the funny Formula Wombats car to stop that thing from going around. So I tell you, when a Porsche starts sliding, that thing wants to just do a little pirouette, and if you can stop that, if you can get that side and catch it, well, that could have been a lot worse than it was.
Yeah, a lot worse. I think we've seen much worse incidents at the start of the race than now. So I think, this is life or death for these drivers now as they try to potentially get the exposition that will mean more to them. And we haven't talked about Funny Formula Wombats in this race so far, and they got past Splash and Dash, I believe, now. And they are making their way to close in on Virtually School once again into P4, heading towards our road. 7 minutes left to go on the clock, and everyone who is still in this race, has made their compulsory 3 stops, so that's that out of the way. So no disqualifications necessary for any of these drivers and any of these teams. But I think the story we're starting to see here, that the order's been chopping and changing all the time, and it's hard to tell who would be able to get the podium today from P2 downwards. P1 has been a different story. They've stayed there for the majority of this race.
And what's the most insane thing about it is it's not just in ACC that they've been dominating. It's also in that real world, as we saw them 2 laps ahead pretty much of the rest of the field now. It's a dominant day for Yas Heat. I think there's a reason those guys are on Yas Heat, though, as we see them. They're such a successful team in sim racing, and in sim good especially, they're very well known now for being one of the fastest guys out there, or one of the fastest teams out there rather. They're consistently racing at the front of grids. Doesn't matter what race, doesn't matter what track, they'll always be up there. And it's nice to see that sort of transitioning into the real world, because I think we're starting to see now that the simulating world, the sim world, is becoming a sort of breeding ground for drivers in the real world. Obviously, we have big names like James Baldwin who make that step from the sim world, winning through that McLaren Shadow event, to get a real life GT3 drive. But there's multiple other names of drivers that have gone from the sim world to the real world and are starting to make that thing work. And I think this is a real sort of opportunity to see that in practice, right? Obviously, it's in karts. It's not in, they're not racing GT3s in real life as well. So there's, maybe I would assume the RC guys have a lot of experience in karts as well. But you're seeing that sort of synchronization between the pace in GT and simulated GT driving and the pace in real karting. It is the same skills that you're using ultimately. Yes, there's a different driving style, and yes, dealing with the G-force of real life makes it a little bit different to drive. But ultimately, if you're good in one now, with the way and the realism that we have in games like ACC, if you're good in one, you'll be good in the other.
Yeah, I think we've seen that with James Baldwin as well, where the British GT has shown that he can actually drive in the GT3 no problem, with the similarities of ACC compared to GT3. He was talking about it, and it's just great to see how realistic ACC actually is compared to real life. So I think that ACC is a good training ground for people who want to get into real racing as well, like we discussed earlier. And now more people have more opportunity to sim race. It would help them in the karting as well, as we're seeing a blue flag being waved for some lapped cars. And it's not going to be that long before Yas Heat laps P2 again, which means that everybody will be 2 laps down. That's just insane, not going to lie. And I think the number 5 has already lapped some cars as well. Why so slow? Not doing very well in the ACC, but in the karting, they're doing a great job up into P4, so benefiting from Splash and Dash's mistake.
Yeah, but that 9 car is creeping up on them. They've been a little bit faster every lap now and starting to close that gap to 4th place. So there's a real shot here that we'll have a really late battle here in the last 4 minutes for that position for P4. As I think it's about a second faster a lap, at least that time round, as the Weiss slow car was, I think, doing 35s. And we see the 9 car did a 33 that time round. There we go, 34 from Weiss slow, and a 35 that time round, I think, from the P4 car. So there's a battle there brewing for P4. We switch back here and we see there's another battle brewing as well in the GT4 field with Novakovsky once again with Perella. They've been next to each other the entire race, and there's only 3 tenths in it as well. Adam and Durkop down in 18th and 19th. There's a battle there that could happen. So we've got 2 little storms brewing at Spa in the GT4 field. The GT3s are a lot more spread out, so I don't really think we're going to see any action there, bar maybe a drive-through that might spark some controversy and some drama at the end of the race. But we come to the GT4s and we've at least got some battles going on. It's very hard to get too close though. The GT4s you can follow better because you've not got much downforce on the cars, but still it's not easy to get right close, because you can get really unsettled when you're following right behind someone. You see them brake and suddenly you panic and you brake too early and they lose a bit of time. It's very hard to properly judge that braking markers when you've got someone in front of you blocking you. And obviously these guys are very experienced, they know how to do it. But if you can follow and you can get really close, especially coming up to La Source, as we saw, that pass for the lead that has proved to be the start of a dominant performance with the Yas Heat car, if you can get that move to work, it's all about staying close to that sector 3. And we are pretty close here. We're about 4 tenths behind. You're getting a little bit of slipstream on the main straight. If he's good on the brakes here, Novakovsky could set up a pass coming into Lake Coons.
Yes, I think if you don't get the move now, because it's such a long lap in these GT4 cars, then pretty much you're probably going to stay in P15 to try and get to P14. So I think you got to get it in Lecombe this lap to have the best opportunity, and soon you will start to see the notification saying leaders on final lap. So as soon as we see that, then I think that's where the drivers will really need to start to push. I believe this will be the penultimate lap for these two drivers actually, because they've been doing the whole an hour and 40 minutes on their own. And for most of them, because they've done endurance racing on ATC before, it means nothing because they've used to doing 2 hours. Some people used to doing 3 hours. Some drivers, because of their situation, they may have done 6 hours. You know, an hour and 40 for them means nothing. So because they're used to doing longer races than that.
Yeah, I mean, last weekend I did a race with actually through SimGrid. We had the 6 hours with Kiel Army, and I did the final 3 hours on my own. And I tell you, in the sim, you know, the only thing that you get tired of is mental fatigue, right? There's no physical fatigue from it really, because I mean, yes, you're putting a fair bit of weight through your brake pedal. Obviously, I think mine's set up to about 60 kilograms, 100% brake. So you're getting a bit of workout on your left leg every time you go into the braking zone, but you don't get those G-force going through your bodies. It doesn't push your heart rate up like it does in the karts and in real life. So you can do those long stints easier. You know, you see in Le Mans, you will see people do triple, quad stints, but those guys are at the top of their physical game. They have put in so much effort to be fit enough to be able to do that. Whereas, you know, for your average couch slob like me, I could never do a long stint in real life. I'd get knackered after maybe an hour, but in the sim, you can do those longer stints, and it allows you to do these kind of races like this, where anyone can step in, and if you're pretty fast, you know, anyone can step in and do a 100-minute stint, and it's really not that big an issue. But we are going to start the final lap here now. The Yazhi car naturally dominating the lead right now, as they have done for the entire race since they made that move in the first stint. We do have a battle here. Novakovsky is looking, and he's actually made contact.
Oh no!
He spun Perret around. He's going to keep driving on, but I don't think he's going to be able to keep that position. I would assume he's going to have to give it back here, but that was not the way I'd expected that battle to end.
Oh my God, they go side by side again.
Jardy is sneaking through, seeking the opportunity
as well. Oh my goodness, this is very tight indeed between the number 1, 2, 5 car. And I believe it's a lapped car, but they're still going at it anyway.
No, that's for position. It's for position.
That's for position. Yeah. Oh my goodness, this is changing before our very eyes as they go. Oh, Rouge, any mistakes now, and all their work that they've done for the last hour and 40 minutes is done and dusted then as well. And they can see the car in front as well, and they're on the checker flag has dropped for karting, because obviously the lap is a lot shorter, and it is Yazhi that takes the win from who's the number 5 car. It's Funny F1 Wombats it is. I can't remember what team it is, but it's them anyway. And the number 3 car takes P3 and rounds up the podium. I believe that's Sim Race GP in 3rd, so doing a great job. Funny Formula Wombats, not Wombats. But the lap is still going for these GT3 and GT4, so we'll wait for the Yazhi car to cross the line. But these GT4s are giving us a brilliant show to end this race, which I have to say, we've had no Formula 1 racing today, but I'm really glad that we got to commentate on this action because it has been absolutely incredible. But let's watch Yazhi's Motorsport, who has been the dominant force, not just karting, they won the karting. They're going to celebrate, and they're probably watching to see if they don't bin it in the final corner. But even then, Yazhi,
they could put it at the wall now. They win anyway.
They can even do donuts and still come to the line and the winners. So there they go across the line to take the win in karting and also in ATC. Brilliant job. I'm sure the whole team will be absolutely delighted.
Yeah, a dominant performance. That's the only way you can really put it in. And they're affiliated driving the GT4s as well with Jardia, getting that opportunistic last lap move. He might actually get a second one here. He's very close to Pereira, who obviously has a bit of damage from that contact, but I think he's just a bit too far behind, about 6/10. Unless he tries something absolutely miraculous into the bus stop, I don't think that's going to work out. So it looks like it's going to be as you were for those three coming in. But Jardia, with that last lap pass, moves himself into 15th and 6th place overall. in the GT4 class, but Masik Malinovsky lights the flag victory in GT4. He does technically have to do another lap, but it's a 17-second gap to Nerby, who's kind of been stuck in no man's land in P2 for the whole race. And Masik Malinovsky is a very well-known driver at this point. Everyone knows him from his GT3 exploits. He's always putting out the hot lap videos on YouTube and how fast he can go this track. He's been on pole here before in GT3 in the Sim Good World Cup, and now he's going to win in GT4 in the Porsche Russia Simreal Cup. It's a dominant performance in both classes, really, from drivers that have been a class of their own.
Yeah, and I have to say, the biggest game was Benzino team P2, who started P7. Brilliant job, and we got the likes of Malinovsky, who has driven amazing as well with a GT4, and I think we're starting to see that even with these special events like this, they're still able to push it as like if it's a normal race and come out on top. And F1 means racing is flashing the lights, and knowing what this means to, they've got a podium. They probably weren't expecting that, but you may think that the team name may represent them being not very good, but that's not the case. Do not judge a book by its cover. But we're watching the GT4 winner cross the line. I'm sure they could do exactly the same to what Yassi did. Slow down a little bit, but the gap is a little bit closed up more. So the 992 wins the GT4 class, and I think it's just Nerby across the line, and that's everybody that's done a lap. And I believe Onorati have had 80 seconds added to his time, because I believe obviously since it was towards the end of the race he got that penalty, 80 seconds got added due to the amount of time. So that is it then for the Simreal Cup. I enjoyed that. That definitely made up for not having any racing in real life. So
yeah, it's incredible to me that in all three classes we had that one sort of standout driver that just dominated. Drivers. Obviously, the Yassi cars, it was the four drivers in both cars that dominated in both the karting and in the GT3s. But Masik Malinovsky with a great drive from lights the flag, pole position in the GT4 race as well. So some really good performances today, and I think really impressive, especially to see how well the Yassi pace transitioned from one to the other. But also a bit of commiserations to the 8 team. They were on for a double podium at one point, second in the sim and third, I think they were in real life. When an incident, a drive-through from track limits was in ACC. I'm trying to remember which one it was in. The drive-through in ACC took them from that and put them down at 6th place, and then I think a crash moved them down as well. But are there any closing thoughts from you, Jessica, about how this race has gone? Because for me, it was perhaps not as fun as you would hope with how far this field spread out, but it was still a lot of action. It's still pretty fun to watch.
I think the strategy made it even more interesting, because we don't know who's going to go into the pits as well, and they were playing mind games as well. And I like the fact that karting was going on the same time as ACC, which meant that they had to get used to either the sim rig straight after karting or karting straight after sim rig for not very long periods of time to get used to. So brilliant challenge, and hopefully something that should be done more in the sim world, having karting going on at a similar time, because that is an amazing job from everyone involved.
Yeah, it was really cool to see them, all the sim rigs in place. They were all racing from the venue and having to swap between the two, and that principle of having to swap driving styles, having to swap mentalities as you switch between the two, it must be so difficult to do. But I think that's us done. It was a good race in both things. I a lot of dominance in all three classes, but still some great battles. Bit of drama in all three, as we saw a couple of small incidents in the karting. We saw some penalties that came through that really switched up the race in GT. But 3 really good races today. If you guys do want to catch the interviews and you want to see the post-race ceremony, if you head over to the Russian stream, you'll be able to see it there. But I think that's us done on the English stream. So thanks and good night.
Racing, it's life. Anything that happens before or after, just waiting.
Гонки – это то, чем мы живем. Это наша стихия. Мы едем на пределе возможностей техники и человека. С замиранием сердца следим за трансляцией. Забывая про страх, презрев усталость и горечь поражений, мы рвемся к новым победам. Ведь нас не устраивает никакая позиция, кроме первой. Опираясь на богатое гоночное наследие Porsche, продолжая исторические традиции и подхватывая инновации, мы с гордостью представляем для вас новый проект, который объединит всех фанатов автоспорта. Porsche Russia Simreal Cup. Гибрид двух миров, онлайн и реальных гонок. Какой выберешь ты? Регистрируйся на simrealcup.com и стань частью гоночного наследия будущего.